Hi there, my name is Bisola Miriam. I'm a study abroad coach with over 7 years of experience, and currently I'm a graduate student at the University of Alabama, Tuscaloosa, where I am pursuing a degree in communication studies to learn how to communicatively reduce social stigma. Over the years, I have worked with several scholars who have now gone ahead to secure fully funded scholarships studying programs of their chosen at prestigious North American universities, that is in USA and Canada. Now you're welcome to my channel, The Clarity. 1 minute. So the very first thing in building an LOI is the greeting. The greeting is, oh, dear professor, this, I'm repeating that point. My name is this, I am from so. Sorry, I'm going too fast. Greeting specifically means two things. The opening greeting and the first paragraph that contains a detailed introduction. So I would term the very first point as greeting and intro, right? Greeting and intro. So greeting, everyone must do this exercise. The greeting part is you're simply saying, dear professor this. Make sure that you write all the names if you do not know what the professor likes to be called or addressed. The second thing you want to look at in building the LOI is to what? Your story. Now, before you go to your story, let's talk about introduction. Introduction means you say, my name is so. I graduated from so university with a degree in so, right? And full stop. My CGPA upon graduation was. How do you then define your CGPA? You must have done the free West evaluation. If you don't know how to evaluate your transcript for free, go to my YouTube channel. You find, you on the YouTube channel, on this YouTube channel, for those who are subscribed to the channel, you would find a video on the channel where you learn how to actually evaluate your transcripts for free. And for those who have access to the online course, there's a video on evaluating your transcript. The reason why you must share that information is you do not want to talk about you and your CGPA without actually talking that CGPA or expressing your total CGPA or the figure. You're not talking about the number without saying it in the language or in the way that it will make sense to the professor that is reading from you. So for instance, you finished with a 2.2. Don't go there and write a 2.2. Convert the CGPA and write it in a way that would make sense to the professor that is reading from you. Because the LOI your CGPA is basically showing the person reading where you fall as far as the grading system of that country is concerned. Even if you fall below, there are ways to get past that issue, because you would then have to emphasize that, oh, despite that you finish with that CGPA, for some programs they have offer like permission to continue, meaning that even if you have a low CGPA, you can still apply and you can be admitted, and if you keep doing well on the program, you have no problem and you remain on the program. But of course, that's a different conversation entirely. The next thing you want to look at closely, your story. The next thing you want to look at is what? Your story. So when I say your story, basically you're trying to rewrite your PCG, your personal, your communal, and global story. What's my personal story? Many years ago, I did this. So now, how do you transition from your first paragraph to your second paragraph? My name is Bisola Miriam. I graduated from the University of Ibadan in 2013 with a degree, I graduated summa cum laude? Summa cum laude, meaning with the highest honor. If of course you have that, or magna cum laude, meaning with great honor. You might not have the highest, but you have great honor. Every degree, every class of degree is an honors degree, whether small or big or medium honors, it's an honors degree. So after expressing that, specifically, I graduated with a CGPA of maybe 3.0 using the Canadian grading system or the American grading system if you're speaking in the language, or if the person reading from you is either from Canada or USA, depending. The next thing you want to talk about is, after my first degree, I took interest in social inclusion and advocacy-based research, or I took interest in how stigmatization happens in interpersonal communication settings. Now, I would then talk about that line, that sentence, or that opening topic sentence in the next paragraph. And in that next paragraph, I'm now beginning to develop my what? PCG. When I now begin to talk, I will start by saying, as a young child, I was shamed for being left-handed, and I was said, people told me that I was not going to amount to much because of my left-handedness. And I grew up feeling sorry for myself and thinking that nothing good would ever come out of me because I struggled to express myself, and people always shamed me for my hand orientation. And I grew up timid, naive, and of course I lost my self-esteem. At a point in my life when this became really destabilizing, I started to struggle with I started to struggle emotionally, up to the point that I began to contemplate suicide. I then began to imagine the number. Now, I've talked about my story. I'm now saying I then began to imagine the number of children in African communities who are subjected to this kind of trauma on a daily basis. Now I realize that every year, every 40 seconds, someone dies by suicide. And I imagine that there are young people out there who, because of shaming, because of stigmatization, go from not just contemplating suicide to actually taking their own lives. And I saw that this is such an important issue globally. In fact, I saw that my interest resonates deeply, or resonates with the Sustainable Development Goals. Specifically, my work or my interest in in reducing social stigmatization in interpersonal communication, in interpersonal settings, or in using communicative tools. I'm changing the way I'm expressing it because I cannot say it the same way all the time. I have to flip this. But the most important thing is I'm sticking to the idea that I've conveyed in my first paragraph, that I've said using my story, that I've said using my communal story, as in what is happening to young people, that I've expressed using statistics by talking about how every 40 seconds someone dies by suicide. And finally, I'm still going to express that by saying specifically, which of the Sustainable Development Goals does my work align with? I see that my interest aligns with SDG goal number 10, which is reduce inequality and discrimination. Specifically, my work aligns with target 3 of the SDG goal number 10. Sorry, specifically, my work aligns with the third target of Sustainable Development Goal number 10. Dear Professor I see that you have also done some extensive research on stigma in families. Now, stigma in families does not really connect with stigma with left-handed people, or stigma in communication, as I have stated, right? But there is a key word here that connects my work rather, with that of that researcher, which is what? Stigma. So whether it is listed as stigmatization in family or social inclusion, that the person is interested in stigmatized groups gives me reason to say that we have a common interest. Even if the keyword is not stigma, if the keyword is coping in interpersonal settings, someone who is going through mental stress will struggle with coping. So you now begin to analyze your application story by thinking of the different ways your interest aligns with that person's research idea or research objective or objectives. Specifically, Dr. Gaines or Dr. Mahatma Gandhi, I have gone through your paper or papers titled Stigmatization in Family Settings, Coping with Trauma in Interpersonal Settings. Now, trauma would affect, now you now begin to expand your mind based on your story to kind of see how what you're interested in fit into what this person is doing, even though word for word it does not necessarily have to align. The person does not need to be interested in what you want to do, but the person must be doing something that relates with what you want to do, and or something that you take interest in. Now you then have to then specify, what have you learnt in the professor's work that you find interesting, that you think is a basis for you to work together. Professor Gaines, I have looked at your paper closely and I saw that you raised issues concerning how people don't talk about their traumatic experiences. And I must say that I find that very interesting, because I think that if people talk about their traumatic experiences, we can reduce the number of people who commit suicide. And when we reduce the number of people who commit suicide, we're at least going to be able to have less suicidal rates or suicide rates, and of course the number of people who commit suicide according to the World Health Organization would reduce. And I must say that I find your work very interesting and I really want to learn from you. Last paragraph. I've talked about interest now. I've talked about paragraph 3 already, right?
Yes.
Now, in my last paragraph, I'm now going to conclude by raising sincere concerns. This is where you have to be vulnerable. Now, I'm saying, dear professor, so. I see that based on your interest, now you are repeating the fact that you want to come under the person's tutelage. I see the I see the possibility of working with you, but I must express some genuine concerns. First of all, I do not have a background in communication. If that is your concern, this is because I never took communication related courses as an undergraduate or as a graduate student, because my first and second degrees were in classics. But despite that, I do not have a background in communication. I must highlight some of my past and recent achievements in this as far as my academic interest is concerned. First of all, as an undergraduate student, my research work was on political speeches in the Roman Republic and post-independence Nigeria. And what I explored, or what I tried to look at, was to kind of compare how communication took place among political leaders in the ancient Roman Republic, and how it does take place within the political space in post-independence Nigeria. And I must say that elementary study exposed me to the basics of communication. Secondly, I have served or volunteered for organizations where social issues or advocacy related concerns or issues have been are the basics for their work. Or in another way, I have worked closely with organizations looking to improve communication among with or among people living with social stigma. For example, I have joined work the campaign against sickle cell, to increase awareness about sickle cell anemia, and of course to educate people on the need to be more sensitive especially when they communicate in the society, and of course with people living with these, with sickle cell. Also, I have volunteered virtually with Benola Cerebral Palsy Initiative, an organization that works with people with cerebral palsy, another stigmatized group. And one of the things I learned was, I was a virtual volunteer and I was communicating on their social media platforms, I was in charge of their social media platforms, and I was managing these platforms to kind of help people understand that it is very just repeating the same idea about what how do we reduce stigmatization in communication or in communicative settings. And my work as a volunteer was to also educate people on the need to be more sensitive, to communicate better, or to be more sensitive to the needs or concerns or the feelings of people living with social stigma. Lastly, I must say that very recently I took an online course on interpersonal communication, or how we can reduce stigma in interpersonal communication settings. If I've taken a course like that, basically what I'm just saying is that I have also gained recent knowledge, even though not from the four walls of a typical university classroom. It's just an online course that I signed up for on Coursera or on maybe online. And if, of course, you have something else that you want to add as your recent achievement, maybe you were invited on TV. For instance, I have been invited to speak on TV on World Left-Handers Day twice. I've been invited to speak on the TV Continental. I've been invited on to speak on the same issue on radio. Sorry, I was missing the word. And then I have worked with teenagers as a community volunteer. Just state the best three things that you have done to kind of show that èmi náà mọ̀ nípa kíní ìṣe, meaning that I know about this thing. I might not have taken classroom courses, but I know this from my personal experience. I know this from interacting with people. And research is not something that comes because it's not something we develop from just being in the classroom. Research ideas are developed on the streets, from talking to people, from living with people, and from having your own personal experience. Closing, make sure you close this way. So this is the CTA, and I'll call that the number 5 points. I've spent more than enough time, but I think this is worth our time. CTA. The CTA is call to action. Dear Professor Gaines, Professor Robert, or Professor James Morgan, I would like to say I would really love to talk to you in person about my research interest, as I would want to ask a couple of questions about what exactly you're working on at this time. How do I position myself to be competitive for your program, and how exactly can we collaborate? I look forward to meeting with you. Now, tell me, would you like to meet me on Zoom, or would you like to schedule a phone call with me? You need to give these persons options that you're really ready to talk. And attached to this email are my resume and my transcripts for your perusal. I really look forward to having your feedback. Yours faithfully, I guess, is it faithfully? Yours faithfully, Bisola Miriam. So basically, with this demo that I've just shared in how many minutes? This is about 10 minutes or 11 minutes. This gives us an idea of what a letter of introduction is about. And if you do this and you distribute your letters of introduction across, just distributing to several advisors at the same time, using the other strategies in the course. Because if for those who, of course, who have access to the book, there are a number of tips you will find there. In the online course, there are a number of tips. And when you do this closely, you are definitely going to be building for yourself a letter of introduction. Now, the next thing I want you to do is to take a pen and paper right now. Type your letter of introduction and drop it in the next 3 minutes. This is just like a quick exercise that you're performing. When you do this, you are demonstrating that you have internalized all that I've said so far. Give me a moment. So when you do your letter of introduction, you will be able to build for yourself a working template that you can send to advisors. Most importantly, this is not going to be all that you need to learn. You need to work closely with me in the 100 Scholars Club. In the 100 Scholars Club, you have access to my book, to my online course, and to a membership academy where I would come live once a month to answer your questions and to give you clarity as to how you can navigate your application process. If you're interested in joining the 100 Scholars Club, follow the link in the description of this video right now. If this content has been useful, why don't you like this video, love it, like it, share it, and most importantly, subscribe to this YouTube channel and turn on the notification bell for all of my content so that every or anytime I post a video or go live, you are the first to know. Thank you.